Ghana is charting a course towards fiscal discipline and macroeconomic stability following the successful restructuring of 90% of its domestic and external debt, with plans to reinstate the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which mandates a fiscal deficits gap of about 5% of GDP. The government aims to solidify its commitment to fiscal consolidation. Data Bank research projects a steady improvement in fiscal metrics by 2025, supported by key initiatives such as the medium-term revenue strategy and property tax reforms. These measures, coupled with easing global tensions, position Ghana to achieve its fiscal and external balance targets, contingent on effective policy implementation and revenue mobilization efforts. We're joined this morning by Patrick Abankwa, financial analyst and investment advisor from Accra, Ghana. Thank you so much, Mr. Abankwa, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Okay, so let's begin with your overall assessment and thoughts on Ghana's successful restructuring of about 90% of its debt.
Yeah, so I think that the process was very, tedious. It put strain on both investors and also the government. But I think along the line, the support of IMF to ensure that commitment and covenant that the government was making as part of the restructuring process were adhered to, gave confidence to these investors to perhaps continue with the process. And that has made us get to the level of the 90% subscription as we speak. I wouldn't say it has been one that is without challenge. And because if you look at the domestic program, it had so much impact on people that had invested, who mainly were the aged. And these people were enjoying from the fruit of their investment, which were fixed in bonds. And once this program kicked in, it affected their level of liquidity in terms of money that they needed to survive whilst on retirement. We look at those who are the external borrowers. They also express concern about government's ability to be beyond this process to ensure that going forward, even when they mature in, let's say, 5 years, 7 years time, government will still have some comfort to be able to pay them. So I think that all in all, it has been a very challenging journey, but we have to be grateful for where we are now in terms of the 90%, as you rightly said. And we hope that government will put its house in order going forward so that we don't come back to the same situation in the next maybe 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so what do you make of Ghana's decision to eventually reinstate the fiscal responsibility law? Some people feel like it's a little too late. Others have said it's right on time. I'd like to get your thoughts on that too.
I think that I support those who say it's right on time because don't forget, we just finished our election and we have a new government that is coming in on the 7th of January 2025. It's always good for the new government to start well. And by starting well here means that you need to stay within your confines, be disciplined within a certain limit of deficit that you want to go. So I think that reinstating that is a step in the right direction. Don't forget, we need to put this in context. So Ghana was going with this 5% deficit maximum until we got to COVID 2020. Then the government decided that because of the challenges of the time, there was a need for us to suspend the deficit so that some lives that were being lost because of maybe government's inability to support these low-income earning groups were to be initiated. And don't forget, during the COVID, government went into a lot of expenditure that was beyond its limit. And that meant that the suspension of the deficit law at that time was prudent. 4 years down the lane, I think that it's best we bring it back so that government who will be taking over in January 2027 will begin to stay within its confines so that we don't create more debt that will not be sustainable in future. And I think that's the challenge. And once you create that hole, it affects your local currency, it affects your exchange rate, and makes the currency of the country a bit junk in the international community.
Now, the fiscal deficit is expected to narrow from 2024 estimate of 5.0% plus or minus 50 basis points, according to reports, to about 4.7% plus or minus 25 basis points in 2025. So from what you've said so far and looking at the stats, is this really achievable? And what fiscal consolidation recommendations would you be offering?
I think that it's achievable in the sense that whenever you have a new government comes with some kind of local support. the citizens want to support government in most of the initiatives that it undertakes in the first year, second year. So that's the best time for government to begin to implement some cutting down of a wasteful expenditure that leads to government always going beyond its body. So I think that, yes, it's achievable. What government should do is to check on its spending. Capital spending that does not bring immediate revenue to boost government's cash flow should be managed around this time of the year, so that once you manage the capital expenditure, the recurring expenditure does not overflow in terms of your target that you have for it. So projects that, for example, government needs to undertake to be able to improve the capital structures of the country in terms of roads, hospitals, which are quite capital intensive. I believe that in the first year of this government, they should limit on that and try to put the economy back on track. And once that is done, I think this target of 4.75 or so is very possible around this time of the projection that we are making.
Okay, let's now talk about Ghana's current account balance. It is currently surplus as we see. So talk to us about the factors that have contributed to this and how sustainable it is looking at the new fiscal year.
So I think that the surplus that we have achieved, mostly you want to trace it to the oil revenue, the service sector. These are the areas that have given us a lot of boost for us to begin to enjoy the surplus that we are seeing. However, in reality, this surplus has still not impacted the strength of the currency. The assumption is that in the economics, once you have a surplus, it means that your local currency will begin to appreciate, because now the monies that are going out and monies that are coming in, those that are coming in are more than those that are going out, and that should strengthen your currency. But that's not the situation as we speak. The currency has still depreciated over 30% in just 2024. And that means that we need to now look at the balance. Where do we push our effort in terms of ensuring that if we are getting a lot of export, then that export should have direct impact on the local currency and make it stronger. If we are not able to decipher and create a balance between these two, you have a surplus in your books, but your currency will continue to depreciate. And that's the challenge that we face in Ghana, because once our cedi depreciates, it's a ripple effect for every other thing. Inflation is affected, exchange rate is affected, and that makes cost of borrowing, even in this country, quite difficult, and businesses begin to suffer. So it's not just a matter of getting a surplus because you are getting some gains from the oil market or the service sector, but in terms of the manufacturing sector, in terms of where people are going and doing a lot of trade, that's where we need to see maximum surplus over there, and that will have direct impact on the local currency of the country.
So in terms of probably market dynamics and what the policies of government might be, do you see any upside risks that can offset Ghana's fiscal operations to stay within budgetary limits?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of challenges that we need to look out for. First of all, as part of the debt restructuring program, government basically suspended the payment of coupons on these bonds. In 2025, 2026, 2027, government will begin to pay these coupons and even some of the principal. And that's going to put a bit of pressure on government's expenditure again. Again, don't forget, not all these restructuring debts are in local cedis. Some are in euros and pounds and dollars. And that means that you need a lot of these foreign currencies to pay these coupons again. And that, again, is going to put pressure on the local currency. Another thing that we also need to understand is that there are some projects that the previous government, the outgoing government, has done that perhaps maturity of this project will be in 2025 in terms of government doling out some cash to pay this project. And that's also going to put a bit of pressure on the government. Don't forget that the new government itself has its own policy that they want to implement. And that also comes with some capital expenditure, that comes with some expenditure that must be managed well. So if you put all of these things I'm talking about into perspective, that can lead to some kind of risk if we don't manage it well, and that will put us in a very tight corner, going beyond the fiscal deficit that we are talking about at the moment.
And a lot of people are hoping that with these government policies, there would be a possibility of inflation dropping to about maybe 12.4% by 2025, according to Data Bank research. We hope that something will be done in that manner. Well, Patrick Abankwa, financial analyst and investment advisor, thank you so much for talking to us at this time.
Thank you very much, and I do wish you